It's 420 somewhere, and right now that somewhere is right here. Welcome to the Cannabist Show. I am not producer Vince, and you've likely already figured that out. I'm Ricardo Baca, your host, and my buddy and producer Vince Chandler is out this week, so you're stuck with me and me alone for this week only. I promise Vince will be back next week. First, I want to say thank you to our loyal viewers and listeners. Thank you for joining us today and subscribing to the podcast, watching the TV show on thecannabist.co. Thank you. Now, you know I'm fresh back from a spectacular trip where I spent some time in weed legal Washington, D.C., which was a lot of fun. They have a very interesting and different weed scene out there. And I also visited Morocco on this trip, which was, such a beautiful and exotic country, of course, up there in northern Africa. While in Morocco, I wanted to tell you this about, I went up to a northern small town called Chefchaouen. They call it the Blue City. I hired a hiking guide. I went deep into the Rif Mountains, where most of the country's cannabis is actually grown right there outdoors. Of course, marijuana is very illegal in Muslim Morocco, but you've all heard of Moroccan hash, who hasn't? And the country's king knows that tens of thousands of Moroccans make their livings by growing marijuana and producing that very hash, shipping it off on donkeys to other parts of Morocco and eventually Europe. So hiking through the Rif, surrounded by tens of thousands of outdoor grown cannabis plants. I kid you not, tens of thousands planted as far as the eyes can see in some of those mountain valleys was something I will always remember. And then witnessing how these villagers who live up in the mountains have no access to roads or cars. They take the cured plant material, make their world famous hash. Wow, what an experience, and I'll definitely be writing more about it soon for the Cannabist. But hey, let's hop into the Week in Weed without producer Vince, which is so weird. And we are starting out this Week in Weed in Canada, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau just made a legitimate case for legalizing this drug we're always talking about on this show. Trudeau was speaking at an economic conference last week and had this to say about why he is so passionate about the legalization of cannabis. Here, have a look at this video and hang in there. It gets very, very interesting.
Canada can be America's marijuana capital. There's this chance right now for Canada to be to cannabis what France is to wine. We already have the most sophisticated industrialized production of marijuana in the world. We have the world's largest legal marijuana companies. There's an opportunity here for Canada like never before.
An earlier speaker, Alan Gertner, said today that Canada can be to cannabis what France is to wine. Do you agree with that?
No, I absolutely disagree, because the caliber of Canadian wines now, from the Okanagan, from Niagara, means that, look, our approach on legalizing marijuana is not about creating a boutique industry or bringing in tax revenues. It's based on two very simple principles. The first one is young people have easier access to cannabis now in Canada than they do in just about any other countries in the world. 29 different countries studied by the UN, Canada was number one in terms of underage access to marijuana. And whatever you might think or studies seen about cannabis being less harmful than alcohol or even cigarettes, the fact is it is bad for the developing brain. And we need to make sure that it's harder for underage Canadians to access marijuana, and that will happen under a controlled and regulated regime. The other piece of it is there are billions upon billions of dollars flowing into the pockets of organized crime, street gangs, and gun runners because of the illicit marijuana trade. And if we can get that out of the criminal elements and into a more regulated fashion, we will reduce the amount of criminal activity that's profiting from those, and that has offshoots into so many other criminal activities. So those are my focuses on that. I have no doubt that Canadians and entrepreneurs will be tremendously innovative in finding ways to create positive economic benefits from the legalization and control of marijuana. But our focus is on protecting kids and protecting our streets.
So it's about protecting kids and protecting the streets. God, it's so fascinating to be alive in 2016, and you can read all of Trudeau's remarks on the cannabist.co. Now, elsewhere in the week in weed, Colorado marijuana shops sold more cannabis in April 2016 than any other month in the state's recreational era, and by a long shot even. These pot shops sold more than $117 million of flower, edibles, and concentrates in April, which is an apex that bested the previous monthly record by more than $16 million. So if you were watching the show earlier this year, you'll remember us talking about that previous record, which was set in December 2015. That was $101 million in sales. Of course, April is home to Cannabis Holiday 420, but these new figures are truly, truly telling, especially because, as regular listeners already know, the Mammoth U.S. Cannabis Cup already moved from Colorado this 420 for the first time to California. So even without the cup, which I believe last year brought more than 30,000 people here, Colorado still smashed its record for weed sales. So it's pretty remarkable. Now, enough of this business, this strange business. Let's get some other folks out here on the set with me. Our first guest this week founded cannabis mega site Leafly. I know you know Leafly. We know it. They're our friends. They're basically family. And now he's founded another marijuana-centric company called Headset. So it's my pleasure to welcome Cy Scott to the Cannabist Show. Hey, man, how's it going?
Going good.
Looking sharp. I like the polka dots.
Thank you very much.
Oh no, I dropped it. Cy,
Yeah.
I gotta ask you. We ask this to everybody.
All
First
right.
up, sativa or indica?
Sativa or indica?
Yeah, where are you at?
How does one choose, right?
All right.
Gosh, I guess you could go hybrid and just kind of go right down the middle.
Yeah, you could, especially since there's really no true sativa or true indica anymore. So
more indica dominant, more sativa dominant. So I tell everybody my favorite strain is Super Lemon Haze, and it really is. I just really enjoy the hazes, but lately it's been more indica. It's been to kind of unwind, get to bed at a reasonable hour after all these long days of working. So I'd have to say indica at the moment.
And so why the switch? Was it because now you're working crazier hours than you were previously when you were smoking on the Super Lemon? Or?
I think so. I think it's all about just trying to shut down, and I think the indicas seem to help me a little bit more with that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, so I mentioned earlier, we're friends of Leafly. We have been since the very beginning of cannabis. You guys helped us launch with your map and your strain database until we got up on our own. So
that's right.
I would love it if you could just tell the Leafly story.
Yeah.
How did you guys start it? How did it grow, and then how did it come to the point where you reached that level where suddenly you were selling it to privateer holdings?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating story. It's an old story by this point, right?
Yeah,
we started Leafly in 2010. I actually founded it with two other guys, Scott Vickers and Brian Wanslich. I had met Scott at college, actually, and we'd worked on a bunch of other stuff. We were both computer science majors, so kind of tech geeks, and always doing startup-y stuff. And we met Brian, actually, at our day jobs at the time, which was actually Kelly Blue Book, or KBB.com.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I think Scott originally had the idea, there was some sort of need for a database of strains where people could, review and write about them and write about their experiences. And it was really based on impressions of going to the dispensary, our nearby dispensary, for the first time and just being presented with such a selection of strains. It was really striking. Prior to that, you kind of get what you get, and you're just like, okay, maybe this one makes sense, maybe it doesn't, whatever. I don't know.
There wasn't as much of a need for this before when we were buying it from bike messengers and from dealers on the corner. So what year are we talking about these conversations are happening?
This is 2010. So early 2010. We launched the site June of 2010. And we were just strain ratings and reviews. And what we wanted to do was present a more mainstream face to cannabis. We kind of saw the trajectory that it was on. And, now that we're here in 2016, it's pretty obvious, where it's going and where it was going. But, back then, there wasn't a lot of there weren't a lot of good resources that kind of presented cannabis in more of that mainstream light, that presented that kind of information that people needed. So that was a real motivation. We wanted to do something different, and we wanted to, represent the strains a little differently. So we did the periodic table of elements.
Love it. Love the design element. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. And it's become so iconic. The colors, the green for the hybrid and the reddish for the sativas and purples for
I
indica.
want to get my hands on one of those canvas shopping bags you guys have with the individual strain periodic table elements on it. Those are cool.
Yeah. Do you have the magnet set? That's pretty cool.
No. Oh, geez, that sounds cool too.
Pretty good.
So when did it reach the point where it grew and then it was of interest to a big company like Privateer?
Sure. So like any startup, especially in the tech space, we try to raise money. We had some good traction. We had customers. We had people visiting the app all the time. Good numbers. And I think in any other type of vertical, it would have been fine. But, cannabis was strictly medical at that point.
Sure.
So most investors just kind of stayed away. They just weren't interested. The numbers looked good, and they saw the vision, they saw the future, but they just weren't ready to take that risk. And then we met Privateer. And Privateer was coming around, they were starting a fund, kind of had the same vision for cannabis as a more of a mainstream product. And they wanted something on their portfolio that, also reflected that. So the Leafly Privateer marriage was pretty good, a good setup in the beginning. And so they acquired us at that point.
And what year were we talking?
This is the end of 2011. So
that was pretty quick. Less than 2 years you sold.
Yeah,
Cool.
less than 2 years. And then
suddenly you had money.
Right, and then suddenly we had money, and we could scale up and build the site to what it is today. So, it's a great team, it's a great product, and it continues to do well out there. And we've been with Headset now for about a year since we left Privateer. But from what I hear, Leafly's doing great.
Oh, absolutely. And I do want to talk about Headset because, you're with Headset, you're doing insights, data, both in-house among these marijuana businesses, but also external insights and how they can better capture a marketplace. So tell us why the industry needs this kind of a platform and what inspired you to leave Leafly and go ahead and start this thing.
Sure. So, as a product of spending a lot of time with different retailers and different dispensaries and just kind of getting to know them and understand the issues that they had, and it essentially all revolved around just data in some capacity, right? Just being able to get answers to questions that they had, and a lot of that requires information and data. So we knew that was the direction we wanted to go. And with Headset, we're a collection of services that leverage data and analytics so that cannabis businesses or businesses that are interested in the cannabis space can get insights to be more successful. We have a couple products right now. So the first product we developed was our retailer and dispensary version. That is all about kind of business intelligence. So what does your own internal data say? What is your store telling you? So that stretches from anything from what kind of brands are trending, what kind of categories and segments are trending, where should I be investing my money, where should I be divesting.
Concentrate sales are up 20%. Maybe you should stock more concentrates or richer variety.
Exactly,
Sure.
exactly. And even the segments underneath concentrates, which segments are performing or outperforming others. Better understanding your inventory, better understanding your reorder process and your turn, things like that. It's really hard for these retailers and dispensaries to traditionally get this kind of information out of their point of sale. So we built the system, we kind of call it purpose-built tools, stuff to really optimize your business. So that was the first product of Headset. And our second product is our industry reports. So that's more market intelligence. So being able to take all this data in aggregate, anonymize, and really understand what's happening in the marketplace in general.
And for me as a journalist, I'm so thankful when more companies come up in this space because imagine being us for the first 2 years covering legal marijuana and people are like, well, we'd love to know this and how are edibles selling compared to concentrates and is flower still outperforming, and we're like, we wish we knew. God, I mean, especially the way the state of Colorado collects this data, we have no idea without private companies like you and others coming out and saying, okay, this is what's happening from our research.
Right, and the traceability stuff, the Colorado collecting the data, Washington's collecting the data, that stuff's really great at for top level numbers and broad categories. But with cannabis, it's really tricky because we don't have UPC. We don't have a barcode, you know. So everybody's entering these products differently in all of their point of sale. So being able to link all these products down and classify them, it's a difficult problem, a real challenge, and one that we had to solve to do Headset. And you know, I think that is one of our value adds, to be able to say down to like a distinct SKU, essentially, with this product and how well is it performing in the market.
Well, you heard me earlier talking about Colorado's record-setting April, 117 million, smashing the previous monthly record by 16 million. That's insane. I don't know that anybody necessarily saw that coming, even though we knew it was going to be big. But
sure.
What's another new statistic or insight that maybe you have access to through Headsets or somewhere else that you think that is worth talking about?
Absolutely. So, you know, speaking of April numbers, you know, Washington is our backyard. We're based in Seattle, and we had a really good 420 out there as well. I believe we did about $5.5 million in sales on just that day, which is pretty good.
Sure.
And then we're running some numbers since Colorado has launched their tax numbers for April, so we're starting to be able to get those insights. We looked at Washington's numbers as well, and we're pretty close, which is pretty interesting.
In terms of overall monthly sales?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
From January to April. So, you know, in the $220 million range. Which is getting pretty close to where you guys are at for recreational, not for medical included, right? Medical, it's in Washington, medical is a bit of a tricky one. Just like California, it's a little much less regulated, to say the least.
Sure.
So, but just as far as recreational sales, yeah, it's pretty positive. So it's taken Washington a little bit of time to catch up, I think, to Colorado, because you guys had such a sophisticated medical market that could convert to recreational.
A regulated medical market, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And now we're finally getting there. Looks like.
Well, speaking of your home state, but now you're in my home state. So let's
right,
compare this, all right, Sai? You know, they have very, very different cannabis markets.
Right.
Some of these differences are obvious, others are more subtle, but I want you to tell me, since you've clearly spent a lot of time in each, which of these two pioneering states mostly got legalization and regulation right? Which of them did it the best?
Well, I think, you know, day one, Colorado definitely, you know, was in a great spot. And because of your regulated medical market, you guys were able to just flip a switch, essentially, and start the recreational sales, where Washington took a long time after I-502 passed, and I think it was a bit of a struggle in the beginning. Those first few months of recreational sales, there was supply shortages, pricing was through the roof.
Sure, and yours started 5 months after ours did, even though we voted at the same time. So
exactly. So it took a long time to get there. So yeah, I think out of the gate, you know, Colorado was right there, but I think Washington's catching up. And some interesting things about Washington, if you ever get a chance to go, you know, to Seattle or any of our neighboring cities and just check out retailers, is that they had to be created, you know, from scratch. They didn't exist before. It wasn't medical that could be converted. And because of that, you know, they didn't have certain limitations. Like you had to have a waiting room, you know, because you're checking in new patients, and you had to have 2 doors, you know, where a lot of design was based around that medical to recreational. And still a lot of places have some of that hybrid in Colorado. But in Washington, it was just strictly recreational. So it was really cool to see some interesting takes on what a recreational store might look like, just with no sense of what it should look like, right? Because there was nothing that had started just from scratch like that.
So Colorado did it the best.
Colorado.
And now Washington's catching up.
Washington's catching up.
Is that where we're at?
Yeah, I think so. And I love the product selection in Washington. I love the branding in Washington. We have got a lot of brands, a lot of variety of products. We do prepackaged flowers, so that's pretty interesting to see.
I know, it's always so off-putting for me to see that on
Is
Instagram or my friends, you know, posting photos, especially just because here we can smell it, we can watch them take it out with the chopsticks and put it into a canister, but all of the flour is prepackaged.
All of it's prepackaged, so it's just kind of on, you know, how it looks most of the time, and the bud tenders' recommendations. They have sniffer jars, things like that to try and get around it, but the stuff dries out so fast in there, and it's never a good representation. So they're trying to figure that out. But it being prepackaged, you know, it's more in line with kind of any product, any consumer packaged good, you know, you'd expect. You just take it off the shelf and you purchase it. You know, you're not digging into a jar to grab anything.
And in Colorado, we're buying bulk from the bulk bin, digging in there with getting our oatmeal.
That's right, yeah.
Well, Sai, thanks for coming out. We're going to talk with you here some more in a few minutes, but a pleasure finally meeting you after all these years of being partners with Leafly.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, on to our next segment, where we are joined by our friend, Professor Pat, for this week's entry in the new Cannabist Lexicon.
Wax. The opaque, crumbly texture seen in hash oil, generally after being whipped over heat in order to introduce air into the product. Wax is preferred by old-school concentrate smokers who don't have a fancy rig, as it is easy to handle with bare hands and can simply be crumbled on top of a bowl to add an extra punch. To hear that in a sentence, that dispensary has terrible flowers, but they source in some solid wax.
Thank you for that, Professor Pat. Now on to our next guest, who works in the business of cannabis security, which is booming. Please help me in welcoming Security Grade Protective Services CEO, Derek Porter, to the Cannabist Show. Derek.
Hey there.
How's it going, man?
It's going
Pleasure
well.
to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
Derek, sativa or indica?
Oh, okay. So, on the rare occasions that I partake, I'm like Cy here. I'm a hybrid fan.
Okay,
Sativa
yeah.
will crank me up way too high, and indica will drag me down way too low. So,
I hear that.
I'm a
Yeah, I
fan
think
of
there's
the
a
hybrid.
reason why hybrids are so popular. You know?
Absolutely.
I think you're not alone. in
Is
that.
it Jack? Am I pronouncing this right? Is it Jack Herer?
Sure.
That's
I don't know if you're pronouncing it right, but yeah,
Sounds about
he's
right.
a
It's a
legend. and
hybrid, right? I think it is.
Maybe sativa.
Herrera?
Maybe.
Yeah,
Is it
Jack
Herrera
Herrera.
or Herrera?
Okay, well, I like that one. So, whichever one that one is.
That's your favorite strain.
If I had to pick a favorite, I think that would be my favorite, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on. I'm
Absolutely.
psyched. Next week's show, we're going to have a representative from a different security company, Blue Line. You guys are our first security companies on the show. I don't know why it's taken us so long, 60 plus episodes in, but thrilled to have you here. Let's talk about some of this goodness.
Certainly.
And that is to say that the marijuana industry has unique security concerns is, of course, an understatement. So I want you to tell us why this space, businesses in this space, need to take all aspects of security so seriously.
Certainly. So, like anything with value, you have to keep it secure, you know, whether it's diamonds or marijuana. This is a product that has a significant black market to it, where it can be sold very easily if taken the cash value. I don't know right now what the going rate for in Denver for a pound of, you know, X product is,
Sure.
but you can stuff X amount into a backpack, and if it's stolen, it can be easily sold. So like anything with that, you know, there's obvious concerns of theft, so it needs to be secure. So
But
it's
how is
simple
this
as that.
industry specifically different than, you know, owning a liquor store, or, you know, convenience store, you know,
Sure.
clothing store?
So with this industry specifically, there's a lot of transport that's involved, in addition to a variety of other things. You mentioned liquor, so think of liquor where, you know, a bottle of, you know, a Jack Daniels or whatever has a significantly smaller value by comparison to the weight. However, you have mass distributors that are taking by truck and moving it to A, B, C, so on and so forth. In addition to that, the checks and balances and controls for alcohol have been around for however many years. In addition
Decades.
to anything else of value, the checks and balances, you know, they've been around for a very long time. The cannabis industry is in its infant stages, so those checks and balances are still being built and they're still being tweaked here and there.
And especially absence of banking. A majority of these businesses still do not have legitimate banking, and so part of what you do is it transporting money and maybe bringing a cash payment to the Department of Revenue or to another vendor.
It absolutely is, yes. That's a good question. So transport's a little bit trickier. From the business standpoint, transport, the margins can be smaller. And then when an operation, we have several clientele that are larger, more sophisticated operations where they have multiple sites, multiple grows and so forth. To where once the transport gets to a certain extent, usually they'll do it proprietary. The cost will be significant outside if they outsourced it. And once checks and balances are in place, and you know some extensive consultation and so forth that complies with the transport aspects, it becomes a lot easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating because of all the different elements. It's like, yeah, you
Right.
can have a security guard at the door. The state says you have to have X many cameras in your shop.
Right.
And then there's the transportation of this product and the massive amounts of cash that are there because
And the banking, yeah.
most of these businesses don't have a bank account.
Right.
You guys do what people would expect you to do. I mean, you're a cannabis, you're a security firm. One of the things you do is cannabis. So
Right.
you guys do custom security systems, security guards,
Right.
background checks on new employees. But you guys also do something interesting. You handle compliance. And I
Right.
want you to tell me about that because it seems like this is a new 360 model for cannabis. And is that the norm? Now, is that expected of you as the cannabis security company to also handle compliance?
So we want to be full circle in many respects. We are a comprehensive security firm. So everything under that security umbrella, we want to be able to help you out with. Obviously, power advocates of safety and security. We want to protect people and assets. So the compliance coming into play because compliance is so huge when it comes to the cannabis space. We will obviously take care of the security compliance concerns. But in addition to being security gurus, we are also power networkers. We have immersed ourselves in the industry for now 4 years, security grade with cannabis for 4 years now. And we have made friends left and right, especially with compliance consultants, whether it's the Denver Relief Consulting and then a lot of one-man band operation consultants who have specific niches, whether it's helping you out with getting the license or helping you out with compliance with regards to cultivation, all the way to just generalized compliance and so forth, helping out with internal shrinkage problems and so forth. There's a lot there. Anyways, my point being behind that is that we have a massive network where we can reach out to friends who have helped us out, refer work our way, and we push that business to them.
And if you can't do it, somebody in your network can. And here, we're going to hook you up. I like it. This is interesting too because you guys aren't just a business in this space. So many businesses serving the marijuana industry are like, yeah, some of our clients are marijuana businesses. You guys are also involved advocates, members of organizations, and this is something you prominently promote on your website. We believe this plant should be legal. So
Right.
why is that an important distinction? Do you think people look at different security companies and say, security grade, they care about this plant as much as we do, so maybe we'll do business with these guys?
Sure. So we've met a lot of competition out there who, they want to, it's a green rush. There's a lot of money to be made. Okay, it's a booming business, as we all know. And we have met competition out there who, they keep everything under the radar with regards to operating in cannabis. Obviously, we are power advocates of cannabis. From hiring personnel to who we have a special story behind that with regards to the CBD aspects. We've had a gentleman that worked for us whose daughter was terribly epileptic, and once we saw the medicinal properties and so forth, we realized just how powerful this is. Even to I'm a veteran myself, and a lot of veterans out there suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. They use cannabis again as a medicinal relief and so forth. Even to pushing as far as holding parties for Students for Sensible Drug Policy. Last year we had a private event for them to raise money. So we're just firm believers in, recreational, okay, great, if it makes you feel good, fine. But the medicinal aspects alone, we have heard so many stories, and we know people directly who have just hugely benefited from it. So, it's time to take the federal handcuffs off and continue charging forward aggressively.
And that's been fun to watch because you're right. Reporting in this space, late 2013, we were recreational. The sales hadn't started yet, but you're right. When I was trying to talk to so many of the businesses, hey, I hear you're working with weed companies, and it's like, no, that's quiet. We don't necessarily go there. But here you guys are. Loud and proud. Let's do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to bring Cy back into the conversation.
Sure.
We are talking about cannabis security. I think this is really interesting because Colorado regulators have had this concern for a number of years. We've written about it. The New York Times has written about it. The scenario is this. You own a pot business. You're taking off for the night in your Subaru. Maybe you have $100,000 in the back of your truck. Maybe you have $200,000 worth of product. And perhaps there's a criminal element that's been scoping out your scene, your shop, and your habits the time you leave your shop. And maybe that turns into a roadside ambush that turns bloody and violent. It's amazing that here we are, more than about 2.5 years after these sales first started, we haven't seen that play out at all in any legal state. Are you guys surprised that that hasn't played out yet? And how lucky are we, and also how close are we to finding a solution to this issue where these companies still are operating in cash because most of them don't have bank accounts, and we haven't quite figured out this whole holistic way of transporting the product? Cy, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. Obviously not as close to it as you are, but we're definitely surprised. I mean, we've been surprised that this hasn't happened for years. And we would always talk about that, you know, it's going to take an incident for people to get serious about this banking problem, which is super unfortunate. But it's like, you know, we still have these banking problems. We still have these issues. We have this hanging over our head, but it hasn't happened yet. And like, let's hope it never has to. Let's hope we can change it ahead of time. But it's something that needs to change before it does.
I mean, people are still robbing banks in 2016. And of course, you know, some of these pot shops are getting robbed, but I'm just amazed. I mean, I know the governor of Colorado, his #1 marijuana guy is named Andrew Friedman, quoted in the New York Times in 2014, I believe, saying just this: we are worried about this, and this is one of the reasons why Hickenlooper is so concerned about banking. Derek, where are you at on this issue? What are your thoughts?
So based on your scenario, am I surprised? No, not necessarily. You know, when it comes to casing a place, you know, I mean, so you mentioned bank robberies. Even bank robberies, it's sort of a, you know, quote unquote smash and grab. You know, you build up that energy and that courage to fly in there, and they know a lot of times, especially from you know, from watching television and looking at past examples, there's not going to be any resistance there. You know, they're going to get a limited amount of cash. They're going to be able to put into a backpack, and they'll probably, you know, depending on the area, probably be able to escape law enforcement. So there's not a, you know, something like that is not sophisticated. When it comes to marijuana, a lot of the criminal occurrences, aside from internal shrinkage, which is an entirely different issue, are in many respects that, you know, that smash and grab style. There's not sophistication there. To case an operation and watch when they take product out, which is typically random times and so forth, you know, there has to be a level of will there, a level of commitment to watch over for something like that. To comment on in your comments, I do think, sadly, and I'll call them out right now, I don't feel that the MED, at least with Colorado, I can't speak with a lot of the other states, but I don't feel that the MED does a very good job when it comes to pressing a lot of different security concerns. And I do think that you're right when you say it's going to take someone to either get seriously hurt or killed as a reactive society, as we are, before stricter checks and balances will be put in place to prevent something like that from happening in the future. I think that, you know, I think something terrible will happen in time, and in many respects, terrible things have happened already in cannabis, a lot of it just under the radar and hasn't touched the media. There's been some pretty bad robberies. However, until it happens, you know, at a higher frequency and legislation is pressed for better checks and balances, you know, like you mentioned, I think someone will actually have to get hurt, and it'll have to be higher frequency.
Yeah, until it's like blood splattered on the side of a road on the 10 o'clock news, and maybe then we'll see change, or maybe we won't. But it's interesting. It's an issue I've always been concerned about, and it's nothing we ever want to happen. But my God, with all of this money and all of this very valuable product, which you spoke to, it's I'm surprised that it hasn't happened yet. But gentlemen, it is time for our pot quiz tonight. I hope you came prepared. I hope you've been studying and reading the Cannabist as always, right? Follow us on Twitter.
Every day.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Cy, we are starting with you.
All right.
How this works. Cy, if you don't get the right answer, then Derek has the opportunity for the steal, vice versa. So, here we go. Question 1. Cy, how many Americans now have access to medical marijuana? A, 150 million, B, 175 million, C, 190 million, D, 215 million.
Yikes. Well, half the states now have some sort of medical product.
25, thank you, Ohio and
Yeah,
Pennsylvania.
well done. So then it comes down to population. I'll take, what's the last one, the highest one? I'm going to guess that.
D, 215 million.
I'll do it.
Incorrect.
Oh.
That was a big number.
Was that close?
Threw that in there. I can't tell
Oh,
you
you can't
that
say it.
because
Oh,
now,
right.
now
He's gotta
Derek's
steal.
going
What,
for it.
what was
so-
the first option?
All right, I'll definitely give you the reread. So
Okay.
how many Americans access to medical marijuana? A, 150 million, B, 175, C, 190, D, 215, and you know it's not D now. So
I'm going to go with the first one, 150.
A, 150 million, incorrect. The answer was somewhere in between.
terrible.
And it was B, 175 million, with the landing of Ohio last week, the week before, which Ohio has a ton of people living there. By the way, yeah, the number jumped to 175 million, which is crazy, and that means in the next couple states we will be above 200 million. Derek, we're moving to you.
All right, let's do it.
What established medical marijuana states' dispensaries are struggling to keep up with demand this month as they watch sales and patient numbers skyrocket?
I'm going to go with us, Colorado.
That's a good
Was
guess.
it multiple choice? Should I have waited for options?
No, not multiple choice. It is not Colorado, but that's good. That's a good choice. We were noticing something interesting this week. When recreational sales go up on a monthly basis, so do medical numbers.
Okay.
When they go down, so do medical
I'm
numbers.
just thinking there's so many people moving into the state right now, obviously more users.
Yeah. They're not struggling with demand. The medical shops, they're doing pretty well. But Cy, what established medical marijuana states' dispensaries are struggling to keep up with demand, and they watch sales and patient numbers skyrocket?
It's established, huh?
It's key. That's
That
key.
is key. Gosh. Illinois? Is that
Good guess.
sort of established?
Good guess. Yeah, they've been there for
Semi-established,
what,
right?
2-3 years? 2 years? No. This story has been in news in the last week.
Okay.
New Mexico.
New Mexico.
Which
that's
really
right.
took its time. You
Yeah.
know, they kind of just were here, but now if you look at the number of patients as well as how much they're purchasing, year over year, phenomenal growth. And now you have existing dispensaries building more cultivations because they can't keep up with it. It's really interesting. So,
Right.
Cy, we're back to you.
All right.
Ready?
Ready.
An activist and grower in what newly CBD legal state is estimating that the state will soon be home to a $900 million a year CBD industry?
Kentucky?
No. Geez, I might have written a really hard
Yeah,
quiz.
these are
I
tough.
apologize.
That one's
guys.
tough, yeah.
But I knew you guys were smart. I knew I had to give you guys a quiz
You
worthy.
thought we were smart.
So it's not Kentucky. So we're throwing over to Derek. This activist is saying in this very newly CBD legal state, he's estimating that it's going to be a $900 million a year CBD industry soon.
Okay, so this is where I'm weak. Newly legal CBD state. Mm-hmm. That's the key, CBD. You really should have made this one multiple choice.
Oh man. Well, it
Just
is
true,
interesting
false
because
would be
there's
good.
CBD, and
Right.
also think about it, $900 million a year. Colorado last year sold a total of $996 million in recreational and medical CBD and THC. So this is a lot of CBD.
I
This
know
is-
it's the East Coast, and I swear I saw a picture on the cannabis of the governor signing something. Am I right? There was that candid
Hey
shot.
man, give me a
I
state,
just
Derek.
can't.
Can I
Give me the
guess?
state.
Can I guess after Derek? If
Sure, yeah, there's no point.
so, I
but
get
you
two
can
wrong
guess.
answers, but
Is it Massachusetts?
No.
Okay.
Good guess, though. Good guess. Massachusetts, they're doing some business. Back to Cy for the
Florida?
non-point second guess. No.
Oh, too wrong.
Texas.
I'm way in the hole today.
That's right.
This is a very big
That's right.
state. Yeah, and they have, and granted, I don't know if this guy, if his estimate is even in the ballpark, but it is a big state and
Sure.
lots of folks with, the various debilitating diseases that the government has allowed them to treat with non-psychoactive weed. So we'll see.
Now the dollar amount makes sense considering the population of Texas.
I know. I was kind of giving you the hint of, hey, imagine how much
900
CBD-only
million.
weed that is.
Yeah.
Derek, last question to you. We'll see if we can do this.
All right, let's see if I get one right.
A Colorado State University campus in what city is now a lot closer to being granted hundreds of thousands of dollars to research cannabis?
What campus?
Hint, this is a Colorado
Please.
city because it's Colorado State University, but that's the only hint you get.
Let's call it CU.
Oh, Colorado State University.
Oh, I apologize. Okay.
So that's all caps. It could have been misconstrued like any university, but CSU. This is legit CSU, Colorado State University. What city is this campus in?
Boulder.
No. Good guess, though. Good
Okay.
guess. Back to Cy, who doesn't even live here. Let's see if you could pull this
No
out.
hope. No hope.
You were hoping I
There's
was
so
gonna get it
many cities.
Only a couple CSU campuses, though.
Oh, really? I don't know.
Next time you
Alright.
come on the show, you'll have to study
These are tough
Colorado
questions.
College
Yeah,
locations.
for sure.
Do you have a guess or no? Okay.
Yeah, I can't.
So the main CSU campus is in Fort Collins,
Fort Collins.
but they have secondary campuses throughout the state in Denver and in Pueblo.
Wow.
So, Cy, if you don't know about Pueblo, definitely recommend you look into it. Very interesting Colorado weed story. One of the most liberal counties in the state for cannabis. They allow outdoor cultivation, funneling a lot of money from marijuana taxes to parks, trails, schools, and now a university to do research, which is fascinating.
So Pueblo was the answer for that one? or-
Pueblo
Gotcha.
was the answer. Yeah, and they're making some pretty amazing things. They have a very progressive county system, some county commissioners who are pro-cannabis, pro-change, and pro-seeing what happens if you use this money for civic programs and scholarships. So that was probably on me for a tough quiz, but you guys were good players. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank
I
you.
want to thank my guests, Cy Scott and Derek Porter, but most importantly, I want to thank you all for watching and listening to the Cannabist Show. Remember, your reviews matter, so please go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you're at. Say what you like, what you don't. Me and producer Vince are reading those. So I am Ricardo Baca, joined by producers Eric, Katie, and the rest of the crew. Have a great day, everyone, and we will see you all and producer Vince next week. Nice work, guys.
Excellent.
Awesome. Thank
I
you.
shut my fucking mouth to show the sound of truth. I'm allowed to lose, I choose to win. I'm all in, I'm calling any posse you'll be raising at the end. I say it again, ain't afraid to get in. I be going for the jackpot with aces in my hand, I'm raw.